The Afterlife is real. An ayahuasca trip report sent in by a subscriber. Ayahuasca is the strongest psychedelic known to man. It is not recommended that anyone tries it without extensive preparation and a trusted trip sitter. I brewed the ayahuasca using 400 grams of ingredients, a 1-to-1 ratio, in 2 halves to increase the effects of the DMT. Firstly, I drank the Banisteriopsis capi half of the brew, then waited 20 minutes before drinking the Psychotria viridis half, a total of 120 millilitres. Half an hour after ingestion, I had managed to evade purging and had mild closed-eye visuals. I decided to redose another 120 millilitres. Another half an hour later, I began to purge, as the effects of the brew intensified. I saw Mother Ayahuasca's eyes looking back at me, reflected in the glass of my coffee table, and she told me that I'll be alright. Soon after, I found myself in a small colourful room, which felt like a portal to the afterworld. There was a large square-shaped basin around half a metre in front of me, with a black sphere levitating in its centre. It had bands of changing patterns, and sometimes was oozing a white liquid into the bucket. There were 2 entities sitting across from me and interacting with the sphere, sometimes manipulating it with a sort of cosmic spatula. One of the entities looked like the Egyptian god of death, Anubis. I didn't know it yet, but I was witnessing the very birth of Mother Ayahuasca. She then told me that to experience the full effect of the trip, I would need to let go of my life and die. I had already considered this as an outcome of the trip and was ready to go, but I felt so sad that I had to leave my partner behind, and literally felt like I will never see tomorrow come. Mother Aya seemed to cry with me. I felt her infinite love and empathy, while the black sphere oozed more of its white bubbly fluids into the basin. At this point, I was sat in a meditative stance, and considered what position I want to be laid and found in when I die. I decided to curl into a ball, and close my eyes for the very last time. I was ready to pass away, but I told my partner what was happening first, as I could not leave without fully saying goodbye. She felt scared and thought that I had taken the ayahuasca to commit suicide. I decided to stay for her, as she was really upset. I was struggling to explain what was happening and that I would come back. At this point, it was exceedingly difficult to hold on and not die, but I eventually came back and had one foot in reality. The energy it took to hold on to my life was immense, and it even made me purge. From this point onwards, I could often see woodlice and ants crawling over the surfaces within the portal room. They made patterns and shapes with their collective formation, and there were big spiders which danced across my vision. I began feeling queasy again, and decided to lay on the floor near my purge bucket. Mother Aya brought my attention to a particular anxiety of mine, and told me how to feel comfortable with certain life situations that I have struggled with for years. I purged again, and felt like every purge expelled the negative emotions and energies in my whole life. While laying on my rug, I noticed a familiar smell. It was the smell of my grandparents' house, who had passed away years ago. It was warm and loving. A few moments later, I was able to explore their house as vividly as it was in the past. As I entered the kitchen, I felt their presence, and they gave me an overwhelming feeling of love and compassion as they hugged me. I had the chance to tell them I miss them, and even though they never met my partner, they told me they love her as part of the family. At this point, my partner and I were both crying at the beauty of everything. I had access to all my dead relatives, and met my great-grandparents too. Later in the trip, I decided to try and visit a time and place in the past that only my partner had ever been to. I was given the opportunity to do this in a recent acid trip, but never actually followed through, as we were with a friend at the time, and it concerns a very personal subject. I focused in on a point of view at the time, and struggled to gain any vision. Just as I began to lose concentration, I found myself in an L-shaped room, and could feel the presence of the people within it. I was able to fly around the room and describe certain details to my partner, such as the type of glass from which she was drinking. I was very sceptical about what I could see, as she often drinks cans rather than a spirit in a mixer. I was amazed when she told me that the vision was actually correct. This is now something I intend to practice on all my future journeys, as I aim to explore consciousness and what causes this strange phenomenon in my trips. Another intention for the trip was to try and communicate with my houseplants, as I'd heard this was possible in the trip reports of others. A couple of them are not growing as healthily now, and I asked them why. They told me it's because I'd lost my love for them. The plants I love the most showed me how it makes them flourish, and if I love them all unconditionally, they will all flourish. Love really is the essence of life itself. This experience was mind-blowing, and it makes me wonder if the psychedelics can be used as a medium. Since the trip, my outlook on life has changed completely. I now believe 100% in the continuity of consciousness after death. Heaven is whatever you desire most in life. For my grandparents, it's for them to be reunited again in their family home. I have a lot to learn from this journey, and my partner has decided to try the brew for herself next time. Another really fascinating ayahuasca trip report there. If the person who sent this in could get in the comments section and elaborate more on their experience, that would be great. I always encourage that if it's sent in by a subscriber. And that's what makes a subscriber report so much juicier than, say, just me getting them off air with, which obviously I like to have the balance, but it's great to actually have this person who wrote it being able to interact with people in the comments and explain their experience in deeper aspects and get into stuff that they may have not covered in the trip report, answer people's questions that they might have about the experience, say what it was like building up to it. Because what's cool about, say, trip reports like these, you just sort of get stuck into it. I know some people get frustrated by the amount of context that gets built up in the beginning of a lot of trip reports, although I don't really mind it. I like to have big in-depth trip reports, and I think the context also complements the actual bulk of the trip itself. But hey ho, it's fucking just not some people's cup of tea, so yeah, it's fair dues. Yeah, this was really intriguing because it just had all the aspects of things I enjoy about the ayahuasca reports, and find it really enlightening to understand just the intensity of, like, the hallucinations, if you want to call them, or the beings that you experience, that you meet, whether they're real or not, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it has a profound effect on your consciousness and your understanding of yourself and reality. I've also read another one where there was sort of an Egyptian god of death. The Anubis figure appears in a lot of ayahuasca reports. There's a big animistic sort of sense to the ayahuasca reports. There's always this sort of sense that there are these, like, spiritual beings and creatures that are guiding you through the experience. Oftentimes they can be like tigers, jungle-related animals like snakes. But this guy actually experienced Anubis, which was really interesting. It'd be interesting to see if the person who wrote this report sort of has connections to, say, Egyptian culture, maybe is fascinated by Egyptian mythology, or isn't, in a sense. That would be what's even more interesting, is when people have these experiences of entities and creatures having not had any sort of fascination or investment into the mythology of these cultures. That's actually a bit more interesting, because then it's sort of like, because obviously a lot of people say, oh, well, you have an experience of Anubis because you've been invested in Egyptian culture, so of course your the trip's gonna pick up on your subconscious and manifest that once you consume the chemical. But there's oftentimes so many religious experience, just general religious experiences that aren't induced by psychedelics, where people have visions of, say, someone like a Christian may have visions of, say, gods or beings from Hindu mythology, or any sort of Eastern religious tradition, which is really more fascinating to me than, say, someone like a Christian having an experience of Jesus when they have a trip, or have just an automatically induced religious experience. Because, I mean, yeah, you'd expect them to experience Jesus. I mean, fuck me, they've been practicing the love for him their whole lives. You'd be a bit disappointed if you're a Christian and you took some massive trip and didn't see our lad JC on the scene. I was thinking lately about whether I'd actually do ayahuasca, and it is possibly one of the most intriguing psychedelics of all time for me. Obviously, it is just, well, no, that's a bit of a generalisation to say it's just DMT, because obviously not. There's obviously way more unique aspects to this than just smoking DMT. There is a lot more of a, say, an animistic quality to it that, say, just the synthetic, is it synthetic? Or just like the crystallized form of DMT has when you smoke it. Oftentimes that just like blasts you into hyperspace, but ayahuasca has more of a sort of like ritualistic vibe to it, especially because oftentimes you do it in a ritualistic fashion. I don't think this guy did, this guy just brewed it himself, which is also interesting. That adds another flavour to the experience, because most people just do it, say they go down to the Amazon on sort of like a vision quest, and oftentimes many people do it to sort of like cure their addictions, because it's been proven to be an extreme aid in getting to the root cause of why people have these addictions, getting through traumas, integrating your shadow, etc. But this guy obviously just was sort of experimenting with his partner, which is also has a lot of value to it as well. And maybe that added sort of a distinct aspect to the experience that you wouldn't get if you just went and did it in a ritual with a shaman, etc. I reckon, I mean, I probably would, but I don't think I'm as inclined to do it, because I get enough value from, say, other sort of psychedelics that aren't ayahuasca. But for anyone who's sort of wanting to like purge themselves of sort of like the inner darkness or things that are holding them back, this is probably the perfect one to do. And also I'm just well squeamish about puking as well, and possibly shitting myself, and amongst other things. I'd probably have every orifice leaking if it was me. But I do see the value in it, and I mean, I wouldn't be against trying it, but yeah, the purging aspect definitely freaks me out a bit. But at the end of the day, sort of just got to bite the bullet and realise that that is literally part of the ayahuasca experience. It's really quite beautiful when you think about it. Like, you're physically purging yourself of like physical matter to purge yourself in a spirit, like cleanse yourself in a spiritual sense. It shows that, like, say, it shows the like deep connection between mind and body and spirit in a sense, which is probably one of the most awesome factors of the ayahuasca experience, that it does have this sort of cleansing aspect to it, which is just so cool. Although, yeah, I've read a lot of ayahuasca reports where people sort of purge and they don't really get to the depth of what's actually going on with them, so they basically just go through like hours and hours of being sick, shitting and spunking and pissing themselves, amongst other things, and not really getting to the root cause of it. But at the end of the day, you've got to just sort of endure the suffering, and maybe your first time has to be like that, so that subsequent trips end up getting to the bottom of it, and you hit the nail on the head, lad, and you sort yourself out. So yeah, really interesting. I found this extremely fascinating, and hope the guy can talk about it in the comments section more. And yeah, thank you for sending it in. I'll see you guys when I see you.